So now, as you said earlier, it's not just about siphoning out the money and consequently resources and opportunities, but now also siphoning out athletic talent.
Yes.
And it's just going to lead to a further decimation of the public school system. So I agree with you. I think it's problematic.
Alrighty, welcome back. Alabama Politics This Week. Our thanks to Ron Sparks for coming on, spending some time. Our folks over at Wind Creek Entertainment for making this thing go around, along with the people at SPLC. Really appreciate all of them for everything they do, and for all of you for following along, listening, subscribing, doing all that you do. We're very proud of this thing. So it's moving along pretty well. We're very happy with it. Although we are going to be off next week because, we have a producer that can't work one day a week. But it's, listen, that happens sometimes. It's a tough gig.
Well, even producers need a day off, huh?
Every now and then. Listen, people have lives. It's fine. I just like to give him a hard time. It does a really, really good job. But I hope he's not listening to this and hearing me praise him, because I'll never hear the end of it. He's picked it up, with all the little clips and things that flow out. That's all him. It's not David and I. This thing would basically be two cans and a string if it were left up to David and me. We just, Lord have mercy. Although I say that, but I mean, hell, David's produced, award-winning podcasts and stuff out there. So, maybe if it was just left up to me, let me just say it that way. If it was left up to me. No, I have no idea what the hell.
Yeah, our producer's indispensable, though, man. It's you can't do something like this without a really sharp person on the other end behind the scenes.
Yeah, as evidenced by the fact he is indispensable, as evidenced by the fact that he leaves for a couple of days and we got to take the whole week off. So yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, right. That's all right, but all right. Let's do the bonehead and wrap this thing up here. We've given y'all enough of our time this week. Our bonehead this week are the people in the legislature who are, and it's led by Representative Chastine, who has a bill that is trying to reshape the Alabama High School Athletic Association. And I'm sure a lot of people have seen this. They've seen the stories about the AHSAA looking towards separating public and private schools, doing different things that way to try to satisfy what's currently going on in the current climate, and the complaining that has happened. And all of the complaining, if you're wondering, I boil it down for you real quick. All right. All of the complaining is centered on the CHOOSE Act, that act that the Republicans shoved through last legislative session, or two legislative sessions ago, that allows them to steal $180 million a year currently, but going up to $250 million soon per year from your public schools, and giving that money over to private schools. And in that bill, it also allows kids, basically pays $7,000 worth of tuition for any student that wants to transfer out of public school and go to private school, or the people that are already in private schools, it pays for them as well. And so what that essentially sets up when it comes to athletics, as you might imagine, is basically the transfer portal for our high school athletes, paid for by your tax dollars to send it over to private school. So you can now wreck not only the public schools overall, you can also wreck their athletic programs, because all the best players are now going to go over to the private school, and we're going to pay them to go there and play sports for the private schools. It's going to be cheating like crazy. Okay. It's just going to be, that's all it was. And so what made everybody mad is the AHSAA, because they see when a player transfers from a public school to another public school, they have what's called the bona fide move rule. Okay. That means that if you want to transfer from a public school to another public school and be immediately eligible to play, your family has to have made a bona fide move. Happens all the time. Your family buys another house in another school district, you move to it over there, no big deal. Normal everyday life. Okay. What doesn't happen so often is you just decide to go to another school that's 15 miles out of the way because they've got a better sports program over there. And so if you do that, if you go to this other place, you've got to show the AHSAA that you have moved into that district, that you've actually, your family has picked up their belongings from one house and moved into another house. All right. That's the rule. They don't have that in private schools because there are no districts for private schools. They pull from everywhere.
Right.
All right. They pull from everywhere, basically around them. And so what they have set up is if you move to a private school and you're playing sports, there's some caveats into some of these things and some exceptions. But for the most part, you've got to sit out a year. You got to sit out a year. You can't just go to a private school and become immediately eligible. You have to sit out a year. And so, I mean, look, there's some age things. There's some other things about moving and family situations and things like that come into play sometimes. But for the most part, that's the rule. And the AHSAA said, that's the rule, fellas. And that's what we're going to keep in place. And that's what everybody got mad about. Was you're denying these children their opportunity to play because they're seeking a better education? No, they're denying cheating. That's what they're denying is cheating. I mean, it's just
yeah. No, I think you make a good point. I mean, there's already this whole Choose Act thing is already circumventing so much that we know is fundamentally right. When it comes to the public school system, what it has to offer, who it serves, and the impact when money is siphoned out. So now, as you said earlier, it's not just about siphoning out the money and consequently resources and opportunities, but now also siphoning out athletic talent. Yes. And it's just going to lead to a further decimation of the public school system. So I agree with you. I think it's problematic, and also I would have to question, the whole point. If I understand it correctly, the whole point of the ASHA is to ensure parity and balance and equity when it comes to how high school athletics is conducted in the state of Alabama. So we're now saying, no, we're going to politicize it. We're going to politicize it by giving this end run around here. I think you're right. It's problematic.
Well, I've got a big problem with them, and they've been trying to do this for years. They've had every year now. We've had a problem with the way the AHSAA does something. All right. And it's always the same people. I've said it before. Our entire problem in this country are a bunch of dudes now running this thing who were on the teams that their dad stacked for them in Little League. All right. And that's what they're trying to do right now. That's seriously, that's what this is. Every single time you hear of a problem over there, and I'm not saying the AHSAA is perfect. They've made some mistakes. I can name a couple of them. I've criticized them for a few things that they've done over the years. But at the same time, people need to understand who the AHSAA is. It's not one person. It's not the executive director. I understand that the executive director is often the face and the guy that makes the comments and things like that. But the rules and the rulings on violations and things are made by a board that's made up by people from every school district in the state. They're from all over the place. They're coaches and teachers and ADs and people who and they're from private schools and public schools alike. And it just, these people, they're some of the most famous people in the sports world, in high school athletics in this state that everybody knows in those communities and talks about them in just glowing terms. But then you put them all on a board and it becomes the AHSAA and people criticize them constantly for these crazy rulings that they've made that's just harming the kids. And good and well these people, all of these people, and not a single one of them want to hurt kids in any way. And they don't want to cheat certain schools and they don't want to do these things, but they try to stick to the rules and make it as fair as they can possibly make it. And sometimes the rulings aren't what you expect. And I think I'll tell you one thing the AHSA desperately needs to do is put some communications in there that explains things in a better way to people and gets them out in front of some of this stuff. But this is they vilified these people, and now this bill. I saw today that Chastine wants to tap the brakes, as he put it, on this bill, where he wants to reshuffle how the board is selected and inject politics into this thing, and allow the governor, the lieutenant governor, the legislature, and some others to pick who goes on that board. That's ridiculous. It's an absurd thing. They should keep it exactly the way that it is over there. And I can fix this stupid thing between over the Choose Act in about 2 seconds. Allow for exceptions. Allow for exceptions to be voted on. If you have kids who are transferring in for purely academic reasons, who aren't star athletes, who nobody, really cares if they transfer or not, go to the boards and say, here's the exception. Get an exception, get a waiver from the coach that he's transferring from, and and take it to the board and say, hey, we would like an exception for this player. You would solve 95% of these things. 95% would be solved. I mean, and because everybody knows who the star players are, they know from 7th grade at this point. They know the 7th grader who's ready to play JV. They know that person's going to be a star. And that's why the folks are over there picking them off left and right, trying to lure them to their schools. And it's so, what kills me is that, who doesn't know that? The people in the legislature who are making these damn rules, or who are trying to come in and interject themselves into this thing. They don't know how any of this works, and they don't understand it. And they just get a bunch of people who are mad because the AHSAA made a ruling against one of their favorite schools. And so now they're going to put up some bill to try to pander to a certain section of voters because there's no downside to it. Nobody's fighting back on the side of the AHSAA, so there's no downside. So this is what that's why you have this continuous loop of things. And the biggest problem that they have is in trying to take over this. And the reason why I'm sure he has tapped the brakes on this is because there's a federal court decree that establishes the AHSAA. And the legislature has no authority over it. All right. We had segregated schools back for so many years, and a federal court said, no, you can't do that anymore. It's the reason why the AHSAA must be governed by 2 individuals, one black and one white. And so, I mean, it just is, I just get so sick of people complaining about, it's the same people who would go to a little league game and yell at the ref. Or yell at the umpires. Shut up.
Hey, let me ask you a question. To what extent? And you've done a tremendous amount of sports reporting in your career. I've done none, so I don't really know much about this.
Sure.
But let me ask you, as I listen to you talk, I wonder, to what extent is the NIL college situation having an impact on this, or maybe I'm misunderstanding. Maybe it doesn't.
Well, this doesn't, in and of itself on this particular situation. Although I will say, a number of states now are allowing for name, image, and likeness deals for high school kids, and I'm sure they'll have something in the state of Alabama before long, because there are people out there. I mean, local car dealerships and things like that would love to have the football team come over and cut a commercial with them, or whatever.
And wouldn't that be more likely to happen at a private school than at a public school? Or maybe, again, I'm misunderstanding.
No, I think it just depends. Honestly, I would say it would be to have an NIL deal like that. I would say it would be far more likely to happen at a public school. I mean, your biggest public schools. I mean, think of these little small towns where football is king, or in some cases even basketball is king, and everybody shows up, and everybody knows everybody, and the town does literally kind of shut down on a Friday night when there's a football game going on. Those are all public schools. Nobody talks about the great private schools that way. I mean, and listen, I'm not knocking some of the private school teams. I don't think we should be paying for them. We all know that.
Right.
But
right.
But at the same time, there are some good people who are at those private schools. I've met a lot of them. Randy Ragsdale, who was at Trinity for years, if I could select somebody for my daughter to go and play for, that's who I would select. He was the kindest, most player-focused guy that I've ever encountered, and I've met a lot of good people. I was not knocking anybody, but I mean, he was just such a good person. I felt like, and so I mean, but that I just don't think that private schools often have that same connectivity to a region and a school, and that's why I've said over and over and over again, if you put this Choose Act on a ballot, it'd fail 70%. I bet you 70% of the people would vote against this Choose Act bullshit. Because it would be, all you would say is they're pulling money from your public schools. They're pulling money from your public schools, and half of this damn state would immediately go out to protect their public schools. That's just how that we are, especially in small communities, in small towns around. They had a fight over a charter school just a few years ago, I think 3 or 4 years ago, down in Washington County. Those people got so fired up, they killed that charter school from coming in there because it was going to harm their public schools. And they had fought so hard to get their public schools back turned in the right direction, and they had made progress. And then all of a sudden somebody said, well, we're going to put a charter school down there that's going to pull some of these kids away from there, pull some resources out of there. And man, those folks were not having it. They got that thing killed. And that's why it would be everywhere.
This is perplexing to me because, I mean, from the moment this whole Choose Act conversation began, however many years ago it seemed to me like it was pretty obvious that that's what was happening, and yet it still maintained life in the legislature and ultimately got passed. I'm perplexed as to why there was no that what you just described happening in Washington County wasn't happening all over. It should have been happening all over.
Well, with that, it should have, yes. I mean, I think we have a bad tendency. First of all, we have a lot of people who simply aren't engaged in the process. All right. They're just not engaged in what's taking place in politics. The Republicans have done a fantastic job of removing interest out of politics. And that's just a fact. You look, we wrote, Bill Britt with APR wrote a story the other day about a contest over a special election for a House seat, over in the Tuscaloosa area. 1,500 people voted in it. It's a district of 40,000 people. 1,500 people voted in this thing. Less than 1,200, I believe, voted for the winner. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. we've had a disengagement of people around these things, and so often they don't get all fired up until it starts to affect them, which usually is too late to do much about it. And that's the case with this right here. I think a lot of people are slowly figuring out, especially the folks who are now looking at a PHIP cut, because we're short. There was literally a proposal the other day, for funding PHIP minus $180 million. Guess where the $180 million went? Where could you find $180 million? Just so happens to be the exact amount that they went into this Choose Act. And so that's, I think some people are going to start to figure this out. But, what bothers me more than anything is we don't have a very active union in this state. And you see it all over the place. I wish the AEA were better. I've heard their excuses. I've heard what's going on. Nothing excuses them dumping money into the campaign coffers of the same people who are proposing things that are killing public schools. Nothing excuses it. All right. And that's what's happened. They should have stood and fought, but instead they tried to placate and pander to these people. And it's just been death by 1,000 cuts instead of one swift cut. And the swift cut's going to come. They're going to continue down this pathway because there's been no resistance. And here's the thing that people need to understand about the Choose Act. All right. Which is basically a voucher program. A voucher program has never appeared on a ballot in this country and been successful, ever. No matter, and the most famous one was during the last election in Kentucky, where Donald Trump won 70% of the vote. The voucher program lost by 70% of the vote. And so that's what they're facing. And if they ever put, Maryland Lands has got a bill up now to give people more power to do things like that, more ballot initiatives and things. Yeah. It's a bill that everybody should be behind. It's a bill that should absolutely pass and should get, because it gives voters power. But so here we are trying to kill off the AHSAA in public schools altogether. And it's death by 1,000 cuts, and there's no one standing in the gap and fighting for these folks. And that's a shame. It really is.
Yeah, I agree.
All righty. Until 2 weeks from now, y'all be safe out there.
All right. Peace.